Donald Trump is now starting to build his new White House team and putting together his agenda for his first 100 days in office. Mick Mulvaney knows what it's like to work at close quarters with the president-elect in the White House, having been one of Donald Trump's chief of staff the first time round. Mick joins us on Times Radio tonight. Mick, hello, good evening.
Daryl, good evening.
Thank you for being with us. Can we just start with that election result, Mick, before we talk about Donald Trump's new White House and what it will look like? Because you resigned from Donald Trump's government after the 6th of January. You were an envoy at that point and stood down after that riot at the Capitol. You've been quite critical and were quite critical in that moment. People are trying to figure out here in the UK, Mike, why America saw what you saw on January the 6th and supported him a second time anyway.
Well, I mean, keep in mind there's a variety of different reasons for a variety of different people, right? So you're going to paint with a broad brush. But if you want to come up with a couple of reasons that folks might still and wanted to support Donald Trump, and evidently did, he got over 80 million votes. Number one was that general elections in my country are really binary choices. We only have two parties. So you have to vote essentially for one or the other. And Kamala Harris was a bad candidate selling bad policies. So there's a bunch of people who said, you know what, I don't like Donald Trump. I don't like his personality. I don't like his style. But I was better off under his policies than I was under Kamala Harris. And in fact, that's probably the driving answer for most people is that, look, we don't know what happened on January 6th. It looked bad. It's terrible. We don't like it. But we were better off with Donald Trump as president than we were with Harris Biden. So it's the kitchen table issues, the home economic issues. It's just that your pocketbook that drove people's votes, I think, more than anything else.
Okay, let's turn to our team. His team, Trump's new chief of staff, Susie Wiles. What do you make of her? Somebody who'll be taking up your old mantle.
Yeah, I don't know her. Everybody that I know, a lot of folks who do know her. She's from Florida, so she's not really from Washington, D.C. And everybody I've talked to said that she could be extraordinarily well suited to the job. And of course, she had sort of a trial run, right? A probationary period for the chief of staff position by virtue of running the president's campaign for the last 2 years. So her 2 years that she spent as chair of that campaign is actually longer than any of us served as chief of staff to the president in the first term. She brought some order to the chaos, but not too much. Donald Trump likes a little bit of chaos in his operation. So she seems to have found that Goldilocks spot between, too much discipline and not enough discipline. She seems to get along well with the president. He speaks very highly of her. The key is going to be, can she convince other people that she speaks for him? But that's only the first of many challenges she will face. But look, I think it's a good pick. It's an early pick, so she'll get a chance now to help put the team together that will serve with her in the White House. That's a good thing. So all in all, I think he's 1 for 1 on staffing up his new administration.
Honestly, Mick, with everything that you know, your proximity to this story, does she last a full term?
Oh, it's unlikely. Look, the average life expectancy of a chief of staff across the last 20 years is about 15 months, which is exactly what I lasted. Keep in mind, what's the job? The job is to tell the president all the stuff the president doesn't want to hear. You're the only person who does that. It's really hard to maintain a long-term sort of positive relationship with somebody when you're the only person bringing the bad news. Donald Trump had 4 chiefs of staff in his first term. So did Barack Obama. Barack Obama had 4 in his first. Now, Barack only had 1 in his second term. But second terms are generally easier because you're not running for re-election. So I think there's a chance she lasts all 4 years if she wants to.
Okay, let's just get on to some of the issues because everybody, Nick, is speculating on how Trump will approach the issue of Ukraine. We believe he had a phone call with President Zelensky today. You saw him deal with Zelensky at close quarters during a controversial moment, that moment that he was accused of withholding aid for a favour. Do you think that we're going to be talking about a deal here that involves Ukraine giving up land to Russia in the next couple of months?
And just to be clear, I wasn't involved in that conversation. I was actually that's the Zelensky conversation that was we had the transcript for that raised the first impeachment. I wasn't on that first conversation. But let's skip ahead to what you.
I meant that you were sort of around the White House at the time, but anyway, not directly. Yes.
Look, I've spent a lot of time in Europe. I spent a lot of time in the UK. I spent a lot of time on the continent. And everybody I talked to, left, right, center, whatever, I asked them, how does Ukraine end? And 99 out of 100 say that it's going to end about. Sort of looks like Ukraine giving up some territory in exchange for longer term and stronger Western guarantees of sovereignty and independence. That's how it's going to end. The question is it going to end like that now, or is it going to end like that 4 years from now? I think that's the only issue. So I think Donald Trump is probably going to have less patience with an ongoing war in Ukraine than Kamala Harris would have been. That's the major difference between the two.
So you think that is inevitable?
I do think it's inevitable. I mean, I know you don't want to do too much on this tonight, but look, what are the other options? That Ukraine is going to kick Russia out of all of Ukraine, including Crimea? That's not going to happen. That Russia is going to overtake all of Ukraine? I don't think that's going to happen. A dramatic escalation? That's possible. A forever war? I suppose that's possible. But the most likely outcome is the ceding of some territory in exchange for security guarantees.
Is there a possibility though that, I mean, this is Donald Trump dealing with Vladimir Putin here, two strong men. Is Donald Trump going to want to find himself in a situation where anybody anywhere can turn around to him and say, you have ceded ground to your fellow strongman? You've been defeated by Vladimir Putin.
Actually, it would have been Joe Biden who was. Keep in mind, I mean,
But Donald
Putin
Trump will
invaded.
be in charge of the New Deal. If there is a deal that cedes ground to Russia, it will have Donald Trump's name on it, won't it? And my
Well,
point
that's
here is
my
about
check.
his character, though, Mick. Really, isn't it? You know, isn't there something in Donald Trump's character, presumably, that will be telling him not to do that?
No, I don't think so. The man just doesn't like getting involved in entanglements overseas. He's not an isolationist, but he's not an interventionist. And if all he sees, if the two most likely outcomes are what I've just described, or a forever war, I can tell you which one of those he's going to prefer, which is a ceding some territory and an end of hostilities. He wants the war to end. I would hope that other people would join him in that.
One of the changes to the sort of mechanics of government that people have been raising concerns about is the removal of government officials in favour of loyalists. Donald Trump has spoken pretty explicitly about this. That is part of Trump's plan. That led to some of your former colleagues describing him as a fascist. Again, as somebody, Mick, who's been at close quarters here, who knows those mechanisms, do you think that's likely? Do you think it's desirable? What kind of impact will that have?
I hope he's successful in doing that. And here's why. I ran a federal agency. I ran the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in addition to being the budget director and chief of staff. I had 1,700 people working for me. Do you know how many I had the ability to fire? You want to guess? Seven.
Right. Right.
Seven out of 1,700. That's not right. The president's the chief executive of the country, and he should be able to hire and fire people that will put his agenda into place, not have 2 million, and that's the real number, federal workers working against him every single day. So I do hope that for his sake and for the sake of subsequent presidents, that he does have the ability to control the federal bureaucracy in ways that presidents haven't done for a long time.
And the concern, I guess, Mick, from some people is that there's another way of interpreting those fire-ins, and that is the removal of checks and balances.
The checks and balances don't come. The checks and balances don't come from within the administration. This is a popular conversation right now. Anybody who's familiar with our Constitution knows that the executive branch is not a check on the executive branch. The legislative branch, Congress, is a check on the executive branch, and the judiciary, the courts, is a check on the executive branch. But the executive branch is not there to check itself.
Okay, we know that Donald Trump has an enemies list, Mick, of people that he
Yeah, I've heard about that. So
is
I don't.
frustrated with.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to spend much time on that, Daryl. They got too much to do. They got tax reform has got to go first. He's got immigration to deal with. He's got tariffs and trade to deal with. He's going to put Elon Musk, I think, in charge of restructuring the federal government, dealing with bureaucracy. I know I hear a lot about you. You hear a lot of horrible things about Donald Trump. You do. And all I can tell people is, look, he supposedly had an enemies list in 2017. How many of his political enemies went to jail back then? None. Didn't even bring charges against Hillary Clinton, despite the lock her up chants and so forth at the rally. So, look, we'll watch it very closely. I don't see political retribution being a priority for the next Trump administration.
You resigned in the aftermath of the 6th of January attack on the Capitol. Do you think you could be on that enemies list, Mick?
Oh, probably. I mean, but again, I don't care because I don't think it's real. So, I mean, I'm on some enemies list around the world, and I take those very seriously. I'm not. I don't really think Donald Trump has an enemies list. So we'll find out.
We'll find out. Does that not keep you up at night, the idea of possibly finding out?
Kamala Harris winning the election would have kept me up at night a lot more. I have seen firsthand the efforts that the Democrats made to go after conservative groups during the Obama administration. My family suffered from that individually through a tax audit. So I've seen what happens when folks can bring down the full weight of the federal government on people they don't like. So I've seen it more from the other side than I have from my own.
So just to be clear, a president who could very well have an enemies list with your name written on it, Mick, was still to you preferable to the alternative.
Yes, because I don't believe the enemies list is a real thing.
Okay. Some news this weekend about number 10 trying to pick an ambassador. That's kind of our role here,
Yeah.
Mick, at the moment. The prospect of who will represent the United Kingdom in Washington. And there's some debate about whether or not that should be somebody who is friendly to Donald Trump or friendly to the Labour government. There are a few people who are both. What is your take?
Look, diplomacy is a hard job. Kim Derrick, I thought, was a really, really good ambassador early in the Trump administration, obviously undermined by some leaked private cables and so forth. I thought that is it Karen? I can't remember the woman who's there now. I only met her very briefly. I think she's very competent. So look, you're going to pick your own ambassadors. There's no question about it. You're going to have to find somebody that can work with their counterparts. That's it. Donald Trump doesn't care much about political philosophy when it comes to folks overseas. It's more about a personal relationship. There were left-leaning government world leaders he was much closer to than some right-leaning, just because he got along with them fairly well. You know, he liked Boris Johnson. He didn't like Theresa May. He liked Scott Morrison in Australia. He didn't like Emmanuel Macron. So it doesn't have as much to do with politics as it has to do with personality. So I'm sure there's somebody very capable in the diplomatic corps in the UK who can walk that fine line. And I look forward to seeing who that person is.
Just finally, Mick, how do you assess the government's relationship with Donald Trump? David Lammy, heavily criticised for some comments that he made about him, has been pointed out. Lots of people have made critical comments of Donald Trump and, as you say, got on perfectly well with them. Do you feel hopeful for that relationship despite all of its tensions and contradictions?
I do. It's going to be a hurdle. There's no question, but it's certainly not an insurmountable hurdle. I mean, lots of folks have said bad things about Donald Trump going on to be some of his closest friends. That being said, you have to address it. And you have to deal with it. I think it's up to the Labor government to come forward and sort of offer the first peace branch. I don't know if Stormer's called him yet. I don't know if he said anything about Lammy, but it might be nice if Lammy says, look, I know what I said in the past and look forward to working together with him in the future.
They had dinner. They had dinner before the election, actually. David Lammy went to Trump Tower and had dinner,
good.
with him. By all accounts, they had a good time.
I was not aware of that. You tell me something I don't. That's a great sign, by the way, because that's look. If I was getting ready to do this interview and you put out a tweet 20 minutes beforehand saying something awful about me, don't you think it might impact the dialogue that we have until we work through it? Yeah, that's human nature, but it doesn't mean it's insurmountable and you can't go on and have a good relationship despite those things having been said.